Gonna go get his
No,
glasses.
that's fine. I'll sit here until
No,
we
we
start
can-
and then I get up and leave, right?
We can go, no, because then we won't have
Do
a
you-
quorum.
Alright.
Why don't you go now?
Yeah,
We can
just
start
go.
a few minutes.
That's
Yeah.
all right, we can wait.
Yeah, we can wait.
You can wear mine, but I don't know if they're enough. I can just squint.
I can't.
Desiree can hold it for me. And then I can see it.
And then y'all can pass your glasses back and forth.
I got in to vote yesterday and I didn't have my glasses and I was like, oh shit.
That was the one thing I remembered.
Oh, dear Lord.
But it was big
Locked out
enough.
of my computer.
It's big enough and bright enough that I could see. But I was like, oh no.
All right, let me pull the agenda here.
Add to the list of, I'm keeping a running list of, not really, but I joke about this every time I come up with a new thing that I can't do without my glasses.
Did you always wear glasses,
No.
or was it?
I had-
I hear that at
It's
40,
just a day. It's just a day.
like it just
There's
happens.
just a day.
There
Like all of a
is.
sudden
Yeah.
you're like, wow, I might need, I might
100%
like need the
trail.
flashlight.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can see it fine.
You start
and then one day
increasing the font size on your
then
phone.
one day the
The funny
flashlight
thing is,
doesn't work.
mine was
You do the
it
readers?
was
You have readers?
I
had a
have readers, especially when I am reading the budget
Yeah.
or a couple Excel documents.
Well, I had a splinter in my finger, and I
So
couldn't
far
get my
back.
hand far enough away
Yeah.
to see the splinter. And that was when I
Yeah.
realized that I needed glasses.
That's
And I was like,
hysterical.
I put them on for the first time, and I was like, oh my god,
This is how I should live.
that's actually a big splinter.
Alright.
All right, so now we all got our
See,
glasses.
we survived, Blair.
I swear.
It's only 9:01.
There you
Yeah,
go.
that was fast.
Are we live?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
All right,
We've been live.
I know.
Been live.
It's been the comedy hour. We're good. All right. Good morning, officially. 9:02 on Wednesday, November 6th. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. This is Public Services and Facilities Committee. Do we have any citizens' comments?
Do not.
All right. Approval of the previous meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Old business? I see none. All right. First thing on new business, consideration of contract to Game Time for the replacement of the playground equipment at the recreation center. And I'm sorry, I've not been speaking into the microphone, even though we have these fancy new tables and everything. All right, so I will let Carrie take it away? Or
Yes, I'll
is
just
that-
give a very,
Okay.
very high-level overview. This, as you know, was something that the committee recommended and council adopted as part of the FY25 budget, replacing the playground equipment at the recreation center. We had talked about the condition of the current playground equipment, and that's part of the reason why we presented a proposal to replace it and also replace the flooring to a pour-and-play material. The proposal that you have in front of you from Game Time is a company that is on state contract. State contract exempts the city from having to do a sealed competitive procurement process.
Could you explain that a little bit more? What it means to have, so basically, my understanding is that that means that the state has already gone through the procurement process
Correct.
for these businesses. And so they
Correct.
have a list of businesses that are already, they've
Approved.
skipped that, so you get to skip that process. But
Correct.
it's already been done. It's not like,
Competitively procured. That's
Yes.
right.
but
That's
at the
right.
state level and then. Awesome.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
that's part of the reason why it's included as an exemption in our code, because it's already gone through a competitive process by the state. So I'll let Carrie speak into all that she has done to get to this point. We can also speak about the proposed setup and equipment that is being proposed. And I know we have somebody here that can also answer any specific questions. So the cost of the option that's in front of you is around $488,000, so well within the budgeted amount. And just as a reminder, this project is being paid for by a combination of capital projects funds, the municipal accommodations tax, the state accommodation tax, and also $127,000 from the recreation building fund, which is made up of donations that the city and the recreation department has received over the years. So, Carrie, do you want to take it from here?
Okay, so what you're looking at, and this is Julie with Cunningham Recreation, Game Time. And so there are three main pieces that we were looking at replacing, which is if you're familiar with the playground,
Do
the
you
big
wanna bring
toy.
that, if she brings that over here, can we see it on
Yeah.
the? Yeah.
Yeah,
can
yeah,
see
then
it
it'll
on
it'll
the-
pick up.
Pick up over there?
There you go.
Put it maybe on this.
So the big piece closest to you, Katie, would be the big structure, the 5 to 12 unit. So that piece would replace that on the playground. The little house and slide with the butterfly beside it is the 2 to 5 toddler house. And then the structure on the left, or my left, it would replace the spider web toy that's on the playground. So those were the three main pieces that we discussed during the budget process that needed the most attention. And so for the pour and play flooring, that flooring would cover these three pieces that are going in.
Will it be in basically the same area as we have now?
Correct, yes,
Same
yes.
footprint?
So if, and this should be included in your packet, I think, but just for all purposes here. So the rec building would be here, and so that is the current layout of our playground, and those are the pieces overlaid top of the existing pieces now.
Are you planning on keeping the mulch outside the pour and play?
So there will be mulch outside the pour and play surface.
So the pour and play would
Is
be just
this outlined
the
area
outline,
here, and there
okay.
would be mulch. And there would still need to be mulch because we saw play pieces there. There's swings, the
so
dinosaur
swings and stuff
climber,
will stay.
the swings will stay. There's another toddler house in the corner that'll stay, or closer over here.
Mm-hmm.
There are some climbers and web climbers underneath behind this tree, and some parallel bars and some fitness bars
Right.
over here under here. And so all that would need the protective surfacing as well. So it would be a mix of the pour and play and mulch.
But this has like a lip around it, so the mulch, I mean,
So
obviously
it
we
will
could get
look a
flooding.
little bit like this, but not exactly. So on the edges of the surfacing, it will have to. Right now, we have the plastic or the black
Right,
curbs.
yeah.
This surface needs the concrete lip
To adhere to.
to
Okay.
adhere to
So
it.
it doesn't shrink.
But it won't have that concrete lip inside the mulch. They'll fade together in a more cohesive
It'll be like a
manner.
turn down.
And so it will be a
then
f-
the mulch will come up to it to the safety surface level, or critical fall height.
When we originally talked about this, we were talking about the total cost of mulch annually. And since we still have to have mulch, what, is it half or?
It's probably gonna be about half. I mean, you still have a very large playground to surface.
Do you mind speaking into the mic?
To
Thank you.
surface the entire playground would probably double the cost of what we have budgeted, so, but the majority of the play area is gonna have the board in place, and it's gonna be accessible for children, so it's gonna reach more children to be able to play. So there will be still some maintenance with the mulch, but this is gonna be.
It'll cut it.
Minimize it.
Yeah.
And there's also some places too that when we do this, we might look at. So over the years, organically, our playground has kind of grown. Like we have a mulched area under trees just because parents ask for shade. Does that really need to be mulched and technically a part of the playground? We can still put picnic tables there and then it's close to the playground. So those might be some places when we do this that we can pull back, which will lessen the area too. And it might be just the way that we need to do this with the surfacing, that is an option, and that would take away some of that mulching surface as well.
5 years from now, if he's screaming to do everything in pour and play, it'll all marry up.
It can, there's gonna be some maintenance involved and some more installation. We may have to like separate the play areas by a couple of feet. Like we may enclose this, then move the swings just, like
So
6
you
feet
couldn't
over.
just pour more around it and make it bigger.
You can, but it's not gonna last as long and come together if we didn't have sealed.
The sealed
borders.
edges on it.
Okay.
So, because it looks like the area is going to be sort of in the middle of a lot of mulch, how are, people with disabilities in a wheelchair able to access? Will it be like a walkway that is not mulched, that connects to a sidewalk or some
There is a sidewalk there now.
So there is a sidewalk now, and so where, on the big diagram, the bushes in the back, that is where the building, and so where that little jet out is closest to Katie, go
Okay.
right there. That was probably about the area where the ramp is now that leads to the sidewalk.
Perfect.
And then the area that I was talking about maybe pulling back would be the other area where we have the ramp right now.
Okay.
And that would make it
But we
closer
would-
to this area where that surfacing could make
Connect.
another entrance.
But we will have actual walkways and entrances from, like, from a sidewalk to this.
We can make it fully accessible by taking the ramp to the sidewalk.
Yeah.
We talked about it, and I don't know if it's in the quote, but it's something that we can definitely do.
Okay.
I feel like we should do that.
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
would be important, that
I think
connectivity.
that's-
So it
I
would
agree.
technically, the closest sidewalk would be that area right there. So, but we can look at
You've got an
that.
option of 21,000 to, I guess, rehab the existing curbs, play curbs. Is that something we recommend that we do? It's 475 feet, new concrete curbs around the entire area, is what it says.
So that would be what you have to have so the surfacing
Well,
adheres to
This is
the.
an option. It says, please circle and add an additional 21 grand. It's on page 3.
Correct, yeah, so we left it as an option, but when you're really investing this much money, and we would like to do the fit and finish right and for the first time, so in 10 years, it doesn't come back
Okay.
from the plastic, so we gave you the option, because yes, it can be done, but is it the best way to, complete a playground when you spend this much on servicing? No, we want to really do it right with the concrete curbs.
Okay.
And that is included in the 488.
That is
Quote.
the additional at the end, yeah, it's not the total.
So if
So
we
it's-
would want to do that, we'd have to add that 20,000 to the
Correct.
488. Okay,
Which brings you still to budget.
okay.
What was our budget originally?
500.
500.
So it's going to be a little
Gonna be
over.
over.
Mm-hmm.
Got 9 grand over.
Is there any, is there anything we can change to keep it in budget?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can
within the
definitely look at it.
Yeah.
We've looked at this playground. I mean, this playground has evolved when Carrie and I started this whole process. I mean, her whole goal with this design was to elevate it from what they currently have, but still make it still feel like the old playground, because it's so loved with the nature, colors, and themes. So I think we did a great job with that. But this whole unit here is fully accessible up to 12 feet, which is really cool. So you can go high and be accessible for children, but it's all modular. So there's plenty of things that we can take off of it, change, talk about. So it's not that we can't work within your perimeters.
All right.
Yeah, I think that would be an appropriate next step to, I think that we all agree, I think the committee agrees to doing the right connectivity
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
What would it be if we didn't go with that option, what
So
would
then
it
we would
have?
connect to the current plastic curbs, but so when you have the board in place rubber, and we basically, we're gonna excavate down, so it's at depth, and then there's gonna be concrete curbs that are poured. Curbs, and so, but they also put the adhesive on the concrete when they bring it together, and it really holds it all together. With the plastic curb, we can pour up to it, but it's not gonna adhere, and over time with the weather that we're in, it's gonna
It'll
shrink.
gap and shrink.
Okay.
So if you're gonna invest that much money in this kind of surfacing, the fit and finish is really important.
Okay. Well, we ought to be able to find $9,000 somewhere in a $500,000 contract.
Yeah.
I think I got it.
Okay.
Cool.
Are there questions about the pieces or ages on pieces or any accessibility or anything?
This
for
one
that?
right here, I'd love to point out, if you don't know, I think it's just so awesome. This is called our GT Swell. It's parallel play at its finest. There's a transfer station right here for a child in a mobility device can transfer on. And then we call this Sure Fit material. It's kind of like movable, like a backpack, but very durable with hand grips so they can scoot and move themselves. And then they can, while other children of other abilities are climbing around them, they're surrounded with play, and then they can go down a slide. a caregiver does have to come, with the wheelchair, but it allows for some wonderful play and really getting them in there and being accessible to everything. I love this piece. I think it's going to be wonderful.
Cool.
And when you were talking about, when Blair asked about in the future if we wanted to add on to it, I think the Palmetto Islands Park, the one up on Long Point, I feel like they have kind of that situation where they're separate. There's
They're
different
separate.
poured in place, but they are
We
separate.
could run a small
Concrete path between
Yeah,
the two
and
and
that's how it is up
connect them
there.
that way.
Yeah.
As long as we
Correct.
have enough use zones for the play area, we can be creative with it.
Okay.
And then slowly get rid of the plastic curbing and add more poured in place.
Okay.
And we probably do it a different color, so it, doesn't all look like this is old, this is new,
right.
And it kind of gives it some
Yeah.
element of play.
If something happens to one of these, like to a area of it, is it fixable?
Of the poured in place rubber?
Yes.
It's fixable, but it will be noticeable. Like if children are out there with a knife or something and vandalizing it, we've seen it. We can patch
Patch
it,
it.
we can fix it, but it's not going to marry up exactly. Sometimes we do designs in it, but this is a very nature colored theme, so it's kind of, we want to maybe cross that bridge when we get there, but
But it is,
I don't know about
if you,
designs.
if you had to, it is fixable.
Yes, 100%.
And so same thing with a faulty piece of equipment. If you needed to replace it, you can still get to the equipment to replace it and then patch and fill around those pieces as maintenance needs to happen.
Right.
Good.
Do we need?
Are we doing anything?
action?
You
Are we
can-
taking?
Yes, if the committee wants to make a recommendation to council, this can be on the agenda at the November 12th meeting next Tuesday for council to approve. And in terms of timing, approval of this would allow the Carrie and her team to implement this before next spring, which would be ideal.
So I would say I would recommend we put this to council, but with the caveat that we're gonna do the concrete curbing, but find $9,000 that we can cut out so we can keep this in budget.
Second.
All right.
Sounds like the connective sidewalk would potentially also be an ad. Is that something you want to address now, or because there's not a path there now, I think
There is
There's close, but there would need to be some more. We would have to look at that.
And we'll look at it too. We really want to work with you guys. I don't know if y'all know that the Cunningham Recreation lives on Isle Palms. So they've really put a lot of heart into this. So we'll do our best to make it work.
So add the
But I would like
connective
that.
piece,
Yes.
add
Yeah.
the curbing, and reduce whatever
Stay-
it needs
stay
to
in
get to
budget.
stay in budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
guys.
you.
Yeah, you need to vote.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Discussion of our next undergrounding of utilities pursuant to pursue with Dominion Energy. So where do we go from here?
So, and I'm looking at my phone because I locked myself out of my computer.
Good job.
So we've included in the packet the list of projects that Dominion Energy prepared for the city back in 2020, 2021, of which of these 5 projects, 2 have been completed, or, one was completed last year, which was the project at 21st Avenue, the curb. We underground some utility lines there. The project at 14th Avenue is underway, should be completed soon. So we have a few additional projects on the, oh, look at that, Douglas. So sweet. Thank you. We have a few other projects on the list that I want you all to look at the existing list. I've also, Douglas and I met with Dominion Energy a couple of weeks ago, talking about the palm tree removal program. We also used that opportunity to ask them to revise this list, identify other projects that are feasible, that could be added to this list for the city to prioritize and pursue in the next few years. We haven't had that detailed meeting yet, but we've sent them this list, and it's sort of in their queue to do that. So I encourage this committee and the city to continue that process. But so far, we have 3 additional projects. as you all know, these undergrounding projects are funded 50-50 between the city and Dominion Energy. And there is it's called the Non-Standard Service Fee Fund that has a 5-year rolling period. So, we can use the funds available in that fund for the 50% share within a 5-year period. Year 5, 1 year rolls off, but a new year comes in. So you kind of have a rolling balance. I don't have the current balance of that account. We've requested that from Dominion. I haven't gotten it yet. And I think that's part of the challenge with these projects that are so expensive, and the city ideally uses the non-standard service fee fund to fund that 50%. But I thought that now that we've completed 2 projects might be a good opportunity to review, reprioritize, and pursue, continuing to explore other options.
So we're, the 41st is happening, or the one on 41st is,
So that project, the city did approve they call it an OWIP. I don't know what OWIP means.
but it's in the
It is
queue.
It's in the queue. They have designed it, high level engineering of it. They have not provided a updated cost estimate. That project on 41st, which is listed as your project 2, that and the city marina, it's essentially one project. Even though they're listed separately here, they are, and again, this is very high level because I'm not a Dominion Energy engineer. And Douglas, chime in if I miss up.
Yeah.
But there's a complication associated with that area and the main feeders that not only go to Goat Island but also to Wild Dunes are on 41st. So it's a much larger project than we originally anticipated, and there is a need for actual real estate there's a lot of infrastructure that has to stay above ground that would require some real estate for placement that they currently don't have. So I think that's a lot of the complication with that project and what would make this project really expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive. They need easements for transformers. It's complex. And I think, to kind of summarize, if that is our next step, we certainly can keep working on it, but I think they've told us, this is like 4 or 5 years into the future. If you want that to continue to be your priority, we'll continue to plug away at it. But I think there could be, if we wanted to kind of identify easier, smaller scale projects and keep chipping away at those in the meantime, if we were to see progress, it probably would be from choosing some smaller projects in the meantime.
But we can do that in a parallel fashion where
Yeah.
we keep working on 41st, but then, like in the background of 41st, but then
Yes.
actually do some.
Which is kind of the posture we've been in for the last couple of years. I mean, that's been on
Is
our
there
radar.
something that we can do to facilitate the work on 41st? Like, should we be looking at finding this property, or what?
I think if that's the priority, I would say that we leave that as our top priority and just say, let's just, because I do think that there's kind of this natural tendency to like put it aside and not really work towards it because you're working on other projects. So they're kind of showing momentum. Meanwhile, there's no momentum being made on 41st. So if you really want that, if that is truly our next priority, we might just leave it as the top priority, but just with the understanding that not much else is going to happen for a few years.
Which projects, whether it's on this list or not, where on the island is it most susceptible to damage from wind? And
I would say the middle of the island, right?
Well, I mean, there are areas of the existing overhead lines that I would expect fail first whenever there's a windstorm, and which is then going to, then we don't have electricity. So I would think that would be the way to prioritize it, is ask Dominion, which are the most important pieces of this puzzle
Right.
that we'll get the most benefit from.
Yeah, I think historically, I believe the priority has been visual impact. So I think that would be
Aesthetics.
a change of
Yeah.
the way to prioritize
Right.
is we're going, so it might be that it's, we've been trying to kind of focusing on the major thoroughfares, and maybe that direction then has us looking at Forest
Different
Trail or
areas,
other
yeah.
areas.
I think it's worth a question to Dominion.
Yeah. From their
Because-
perspective, where is
Yeah,
the
where are the weak links?
reliability?
Yeah,
we're
I
looking
feel like
for-
we should be focusing on actual electrical functionality rather
Yeah,
than
or-
what looks
yeah.
pretty.
I think it's been
I mean-
I think it's all been pretty much high visibility
Correct.
areas has been our priority, so maybe that's the shift.
Yeah, and I think you can see it on this list. You have 21st, 14th, this area right here in front of City Hall, and 41st, which are areas that are highly visited and, very visual. And I think a lot of it, from the city's perspective, has been trying to improve aesthetics. And I don't, what I recall hearing a lot from Dominion Energy is, there is, I don't know if they can say, and this would be a good sort of next step for this committee to have Dominion Energy come and speak. But what I remember, what I've heard from them is it doesn't improve that much having underground. There's not that much benefit to the service and the reliability. What I recall hearing from them is it's actually harder sometimes to fix issues because they're underground than they are above ground when there are issues. So there seems to be, I think, a belief that undergrounding lines makes it a lot easier, and I think it doesn't. There are areas where it's not even feasible because of our water tables. It's what we've heard, over the years. And I don't know if that's part of the reason why the focus has been, okay, well then, let's improve aesthetics and find the areas where aesthetically it would be pleasing to have them underground.
Let's at least just ask the question.
Sure, absolutely.
I've developed some different projects, and there's always pushback on putting stuff underground, and they've never been able to give me a good answer. They just don't like it, because if it does break, it's easy to run over there and fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
But they will admit underground it breaks less often.
Right, that's what I've always heard too, is that
And
you
then-
get less frequent but harder to fix when it does.
Yeah.
And then out here, I see a benefit, like our last windstorm, we had trucks sitting on the island waiting for the wind to subside so they could fix it. Well, if there were transformers on the ground, they wouldn't have to deal with that.
Well,
Yeah,
we
I think
can,
that'll be
yeah.
a good question to them, is kind of, we're looking at shifting our focus from aesthetics to reliability,
I mean, and part of that, which I know we've talked about briefly, is I would like to see an overall plan to bury everything on the island. What's that cost? If we need to, can we look at the possibility of a bond to pay for it? And then this rolling money that comes, this 5-year fund you're talking about, can be used to help pay the bond off. I know that's a big project. I know that's a lot of money. We've got a lot of people on the island that are upset that we're tearing down trees, just really butchering oak trees, taking out palm trees. All of that would ultimately go away if we had a project to do that. And it's also, I think, from a safety perspective, our first responders, when there's a storm, don't have to worry about lines on the ground. You don't have to worry about fires caused by lines coming on the ground, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a huge benefit to the island ultimately to do that. Maybe we can't do it, but I'd like to at least see the numbers. Maybe ultimately we put it to a vote, we do a referendum.
Or,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I agree that I think it would be helpful to see some sort of long-term, what it would take to do this. And then maybe that's where we start chipping away at, okay, well, this area seems to always have problems, or this area has tons of oaks and palms that are, having to get taken out and whatever. So this And maybe we see that that area might not be as expensive as a 41st, and so we say, well, look, we could spend our money smarter
Right.
and, just to give us a bigger comprehensive plan, big picture. Not to see the forest for the trees. No pun intended.
I wonder if, I mean, that's clearly, and we did this with a sewer master plan. It does take a fair amount of kind of design. It takes a lot of work to get to that ultimate number. We did the same thing with drainage. I wonder if we could use part of the fund to
To do
hire
that,
an
yeah.
engineer
To
to
do
do
that.
that analysis to come up with the amount.
Yeah, I don't know if.
'Cause
And
otherwise,
can we ask
it's a-
Dominion Energy to partner with us on that? I don't know if.
Yeah, I
that's-
think I think what you're saying is to use the funds from the non-standard service fee fund to fund a
Master plan.
master plan and get, real cost estimates for an island-wide plan. I don't know if that would be an eligible expense, but certainly would seem like money well spent. There's
Yeah.
a lot of work that they would not have to do when a small project is identified, because a lot of that would be done there. But that's, I think, a great question we can ask them.
I don't think, we'd obviously ask, but I don't think they could otherwise give us a cost. I mean, it'd be kind of, it's such a massive undertaking, I think, for it to have any kind of reliability in the number, you'd have to do this plan, I think.
Yeah.
But we can have that
Let's- yeah,
conversation too.
Yeah, let's ask, and then at the same time, as part of the master plan, you're prioritizing based on functionality. I mean,
And
every
reliability.
time I drive down Palm Boulevard, right in front of the church, there's a large telephone pole that feeds a huge area of the island. It has 2 new transformers and one that's all rusted out. Like, well, that's the next project. That's where they're gonna lose power. It's right there.
Yeah. We can also ask them to invite them to your next meeting in January. I think that would be a lot of these questions, technical
Sure.
questions, they'd be able, so we'll extend the invitation, and once the meeting
And
is
kind of give them an
set.
idea of the things that we'd like to know.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
January? Wow.
we,
I cannot, that's,
I know, it's wild.
it's on residents' minds.
because of
I'm
the trees.
wondering- Yeah, because of the
Yeah,
trees,
yeah.
I'm wondering if when we bring them here and we do this, we advertise it a little bit so that people that are concerned can come over here.
Yeah. Ask questions too,
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
citizens' comments and,
Because
You all.
Laura Lovin sent an email to council that some of it made a lot of sense about the canopy, the tree canopy, if it's left in place, actually protects structures and people on the ground when there's a storm. Because it's a little bit of a buffer.
Yeah.
So good email, Laura.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So we'll ask them to come in January
yes.
and we'll go from there. Discussion of scope of work for island-wide walkability study by Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Governments.
All right, Douglas, your computer, timed out.
Password,
You're live.
but.
So this is a project that the city partnered with Explore Charleston to fund as part of their use of the city's state accommodation tax monies, trying to maximize IOP-specific projects and needs and initiatives that benefit IOP using those tourism funds. So it's in their FY25 budget, so you won't see in the city's budget. It's in the CVB's 30% budget. So I reached out to the Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Governments, who do this type of work for other communities, usually at a much reasonable fee, and they're essentially city planners. And I had a meeting with them, told them their team what we were looking for, and they put together a high-level draft of the scope of work, and that's what's included in your packet. And before we move forward with with any action on this, I wanted to bring this before the committee and council, give you all an opportunity to react and make sure that what our goal is still the same as we had talked about a couple of years ago. This is the second year that we've had to rebudget this. And whether or not you all would like to partner with a COG, with a BCD COG for this work, and is there anything else that we would like to include as part of their deliverable?
Of course.
So,
So the estimate, so they haven't given me a proposal, a specific proposal yet. They told me it was around, between the range of $30,000 and $35,000 for this work. And the budgeted amount is $50,000, so it would be a little under budget there. And the goal is to have a sort of an overview and a master plan of sidewalks and pedestrian infrastructure for the island. And back to having a list that we can slowly chip away from. You all know every year we submit grant applications for the Charleston County Transportation Sales Tax and the CTC and the TST for essentially pedestrian-friendly road projects. This would be a list that would help the city prioritize and identify places that we want to enhance pedestrian infrastructure. And we would have a master plan rather than what we do now. It's sort of, all right, where do we have a chunk of sidewalk? How do we connect it? This would give us a more comprehensive look.
so how does this work with DOT roads? I mean, my initial thought on this is, wow, it'd be really nice if we could make Palm Boulevard less
Get the golf
hazardous.
carts and the
Yeah,
bicycles off.
so, but we can't because it's not ours. So how does that work?
So
Or
you-
would this give us fodder to say to DOT, hey, look, in case you didn't notice, Palm Boulevard's a disaster. It needs, how does that work?
I think it would support those arguments. What this would just identify where it's feasible and where we should be focusing on certain types of infrastructure. After that is done, once a project is selected, it would have to go through the permitting process. But I would think that these folks would know, standards for roads, and that would be incorporated into the plan. But it would still require DOT approval before any construction project is
I mean, has
pursued.
this helped in other, I'm sure we're not the only municipality that deals with this. Like, have other municipalities had, success by getting a program like this and then being able to take that to this, either the city, the state, whoever owns the road to make it better?
I would think so. I don't have an example of a community that has been successful by going through this approach, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's a practical plan. It would be a practical plan and something that would support, funding requests if a need is able to be articulated.
Yeah.
I do think we hear from them, they struggle to just maintain what they have. And I don't know if your question was, does this help in getting them to pay for it? And my gut reaction would be probably not, just because they're stretched just like all of us, and they're not kind of in the business of paying for enhancements for the communities. But I do think it would help us in getting approvals. So I don't know if your
And
question
maybe,
was
I
geared
guess
towards-
maybe also finding other funding if they're not willing to fund it. I guess that's probably the more reasonable, likely scenario is that we use this to get us grant funding.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Yes.
those lists that, Desiree was referencing that kind of, again, would populate the top of that list, and we just systematically kind of work through the priorities that
Yeah.
this plan generates.
It is a thoughtful plan,
Right.
right? You can show, the city prioritized by using certain list of criteria, and it just makes a whole lot of sense when you're asking for funding.
Right.
When you can show that effort
Yeah.
has been done.
Yeah.
So I think there's no downside. I just want to make sure that it includes, we understand what the deliverable will be and that it includes them looking at the things that we want them to look.
Yeah.
There's a component for gathering community feedback. So certainly, there's a desire and a recommendation from them that once a plan, there are multiple ways of seeking community feedback, whether it's a survey at the beginning to get an understanding of the problem areas that the community, has identified. Also, when a plan is developed, a presentation, a public presentation, and some time to gather feedback from the community. So that's incorporated, and I know that's important for the city as well. But, the goal would be to have a list of recommendations from them of how to improve, how to make the city a bit more walkable.
And what is, it is already budgeted?
Yes, so this initiative is part of Explore Charleston's budget that council approved for the use of the dollars that they manage from the city
Okay.
that come from the state accommodation tax. So it's not in our FY25 budget, it's in theirs.
Okay.
So I know that there's going to be a little bit of a timing issue depending on when this project starts. And there may be a need to rebudget that next year. I think that the timeline that they were giving is between 4 to 7 months. So certainly that'll migrate into the next year. I know that next year, the city, I won't, we'll have an opening for the city administrator position, so the already, what's the word?
Our stretched resources?
Our stretch resources would be stretched a little bit more next year, and there's gonna be a lot of work that happens, that will need to continue to happen, so in terms of prioritizing that, just keep that in mind, that this would be another project for an already stretched staff to pursue. I wouldn't be, I wouldn't feel good not saying that, just to.
Doesn't the municipal association help us?
Thank you, Blair. Keep going, keep going. I think
Yes.
They
so.
send an employee over to help us when we.
They have field representatives that do this kind of stuff on the
That's
side.
exactly right.
That's right. But in terms of timing, I think it'll probably migrate 2 fiscal years, and that's just something that the city will need to work on with Explore Charleston
Okay.
on.
So we don't need any, I
No.
guess it would be exempt from procurement.
Correct.
It's not, it's there.
Yeah,
Explore
it-
Charleston's
Explore
budget,
Charleston's
not ours.
Correct,
purchase.
and this is a governmental agency too.
Right.
This is going to be very competitive compared to a private, engineering firm. I think we get the bang for our buck.
Right.
So definitely the way to go. I think that would be my recommendation. And they do a lot of regional work as well, so I think it's good to keep that also in mind. How does this connect to other walkable plans or transit plans that are in the region, and how do you make all that connect and talk to each other? I think they would be uniquely positioned to pursue to work do that.
All right. Sounds
So
good.
we'll put
Is
this
that-
on I'll share that with the rest of council, give folks an opportunity to react to it, and then we'll just move forward if that's the desire of city council.
Sound good?
Absolutely.
All right, last discussion of the latest parking layout at the marina. We're working on it. It is a work in progress. We are back and forth with the engineer and the restaurant. But at this moment, that's all I got.
Yeah, the packet includes two documents, just in case there's any questions. The first one attempts to
Get rid of the crayon.
get rid of the crayon and truly identify the square footage of the areas that are under lease and the area that is shared. So that's what you see here. There's a very detailed analysis that that went into getting that square footage. Just
With that, what's the cross hatched areas?
So that is currently shown as white in that exhibit, so that's common space, city managed,
Out-
city.
It's outside of the leased
Correct.
property. It's
Okay, so-
more
so-
or less the same as like 41st. It's just not.
It's
city
public.
property.
It's
so
city
the
property.
The green is the shared, so that's,
Yes.
the city technically gets half of that arguably, and then you have the little lined area would then add to what the city controls.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
So
And
what
that-
we were looking at is just doing a really simple equation of red plus yellow plus 1/2 green would be the restaurant's square footage.
Right.
That is the premise that we are starting with. And that's where, so the first thing we had to do was get from the crayon to this really nice drawing, which has like straight lines. And so that's where we are.
Yes,
Good.
we've tried.
So that's
we've
progress.
tried many approaches unsuccessfully, and this was sort of a last effort or one effort to just have a simple math equation of what's under control by lease, what's not, and then separate. And each party, the city, and the restaurant would do and be responsible for organizing parking within their layout. Same thing for the city. So that was sort of the starting point of this effort. And there's, I think, layout P. Is that?
N,
Are we on P now?
I think it's N.
N.
It's N.
N. So layout N. It's the latest.
But
It
that is.
still needs some tweaks.
Yeah, that is very much still, don't get attached to N.
Correct. Douglas, do you mind going through sort of, there's been some talk about trailer parking spaces and wanting to have a layout that includes trailer parking spaces as something that's important to the city. And our efforts with the engineer to try to see if those trailer parking spaces could be accommodated on 41st Avenue. There's always a question, so if you don't mind.
Yeah, I would just say, kind of backing up, that the restaurant worked through, I guess it would have been M, which did the math equation, but came out with a plan that didn't have any trailers. We kind of recognized the deficiency and thought that it needed to have trailers in some way. Our initial discussion with the designer and our initial effort was to try to put those, not disrupt their plan and put them adjacent to 41st was our initial try. The engineer told us that because of the location of the road and our buffer requirement from our property line that we can't get into, it left a very narrow backup area that wouldn't really work. So we asked him, look into shifting the road. We have this project of an effluent line that's about to go in that's going to have us repaving that road anyway. So we thought, what if we shifted that road? Right now, it's generally centered in the right-of-way. What if we shifted it all the way to the marina leased side? And we went through that, ultimately found out even shifting the road, it just is not enough space. So that's led us to putting it where it's shown in your plan, which is adjacent to the ramp, which does kind of impact the efficiency of what was drawn in M, but I don't think there's not really another option that gets us there because of the need to have those trailers.
I mean, I think the only other option is, it's a 15-foot buffer, right?
Yes.
And that is the city's ordinance of a 15-foot buffer, that the city could change that
That is true.
and allow some, because you're angle parking, so it would be like more of a sawtooth. If we allowed encroachment into that buffer, but that's an ordinance change, and that's.
Correct.
And that's
And it's a
time
zoning.
right.
It's a zoning ordinance,
Sorry.
which would
Yeah.
require, it's, public hearing, planning commission review,
It's a
recommendation.
time-consuming undertaking, even if we decided that that was the right thing to do, which I don't know that we've,
Gotten
not
there yet.
going to go there. Let's just say, regardless of the decision, it would take time.
Yeah.
Yep. So we do have a call
And that is,
today.
and there's a lot of people out there that keep saying that I could fit my trailer there, we could fit a trailer there. I would just like to say that we have an engineer who would state to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty that it cannot be done. And if we want to disagree, if people want to disagree with him, they can, but he is the engineer, and I don't, we have to put our faith in the people that we hire, so.
Yeah, our engineer has a lot of boating experience, definitely says, it would be less than ideal.
Yeah.
You would have one person mispark, and it has the effect of blocking
The entire.
The entire
the
entrance.
entire
Road.
entrance, and it, just the likelihood of a boat trailer being parked not perfectly is too high to risk. I don't think that he would want his name associated with one person parking wrong and it throws off
And
the
that will
entire
happen.
function.
I mean, that's a
Yeah.
certain.
It's just gonna happen.
Yes.
That's kind of his
It's gonna
experience
happen
tells
that
him.
July 4th weekend.
Uh-huh.
And then you can't tow a truck and trailer, which we've learned, very difficult.
That's when we have to call our rep from the municipal.
I know, and I'm gonna come.
Come
I'm
Field
gonna-
representatives do
I
fix
am-
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I am going to hit ignore, Blair, to that question. But, we keep trying. I think that, we have a call this afternoon, but I think we have to sort of accept the fact that if we want trailer parking spaces, this is really the only location that's feasible for the city
At this time.
at this time, right?
Yeah, or a zoning change or
Correct.
something else
Correct.
pretty dramatic.
Yep.
How do you all feel about that number? 7 feels like a reasonable number of trailer parking spaces. I know
I think that works. I mean, I haven't seen, I do think that with the boat club and the marina the way it is, I feel like we have less, and then well, that's not for residents, but the cost of putting in at the marina has kind of decreased the popularity. So yeah, I feel like that's enough. All right, good?
Yes, ma'am.
Miscellaneous,
So motion to adjourn.
do we need to do second,
just
next
a-
meeting, no meeting in,
So under miscellaneous, does the date and time still work for the committee so that we can plan for next year's meetings? First Tuesday, we've been trying to have all committee meetings the same day. So we have this meeting first Tuesday of the month at 9 a.m. Is that still a good time?
It's okay.
All right.
I kind of liked Wednesday. But yeah,
All right.
Okay, all right.
motion to adjourn.
Second.